Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin, and today we are going over the 9 palettes that I bought in 2024. So I have them all laid out in front of me. I don't know if I'm going to do this in a ranking style, just because I don't know if it's fair for me to rank them because they are very different and I think they serve different purposes in my collection. So maybe I will just go over each palette in the order that I purchased it and give you guys a review, because I don't know if I can rank these, but I do have these palettes all laid out in front of me. So without a whole lot of rambling, because this will probably be the shortest video on my channel, let's get into the 9 palettes that I purchased in 2024. So I will also preface this video by saying that I purchased all 3 of my ER palettes in 2024. So those are not going to be featured in this video as far as ranking or reviewing at all. Again, if things change in the future, I will come back and I will review those palettes, but that is why I technically bought 12 palettes in 2024, but we're only going to be going over the 9 that I want to feature on my channel. So with that out of the way, let me get into... Wash is so scratchy right now. We need to give him a bath, but we give the dogs a bath outside, and it's been so cold that I don't even want to get a bath outside. So I'm going to have to see about giving that gentleman a bath. But let me get my 2024 purchases pulled up so we can go in order of what I purchased throughout the year. My allergies are also killing me today, but the first palette that I purchased in 2024 is actually one of my Natasha Denona minis. If you guys have been around, if you guys even saw this roll in to my No Pan Left Behind, which was my last video that went up, I did depot all of my Natasha Denona mini palettes, and so they are all in this Z palette right here. Now, the one that I purchased at the very beginning, but really April, so the first purchase of a palette that I'm going to talk about is from April of last year, and that was the Mini My Dream, which is the one in this row right here. This is actually the one that's also rolled into my No Pan Left Behind right now. So we do have 3 mattes and 2 shimmers. It is just a very neutral color story. And so that's why I kind of felt like, especially because I bought 4 minis this year, I didn't know if I could actually rank the minis because they all serve a purpose as just like a palette that works and also a palette that added to the color story that I was creating in this palette. But with My Dream, the minis have gotten really good with Natasha Denona. It's the same formula that we are used to in her bigger palettes. So I don't feel like you could go wrong with any of the newer minis that she's putting her newer formula into. None of the ones in here are cream to powder. Some cream to powders I like, some I don't from Natasha Denona. It just really depends, I think, on the shade and the purpose of the shade. A lot of time the cream to powders can turn out lighter than they actually appear in the pan. So I'll get excited that, oh my god, there's a really nice dark shade in this palette. It turns out to be a cream to powder and it doesn't come off that dark. So with this one, it is just her straight regular formula. 3 browns, 2 shimmers. This one is great. Now, I think technically Natasha Denona is considered an indie brand because she still owns it herself and nobody else owns the company. But for true smaller indie, I do have 2 palettes from indie brands. And the first one is going to be from Boute Bar. This is the Basic Witch palette, and this is absolutely stunning, as I have my side profile of the nose that I don't like. I'm telling you, sometimes when you catch yourself in the mirror in certain angles and you're like, okay, that's why I've wanted a nose job since I was a teenager. But Basic Witch palette, this is absolutely stunning. I love this color story because I love purples and greens together. It goes decently light with this pastel purple and then pretty dark with this dark brown that actually turns purple whenever you use it. I also really enjoy these pops of like warm tones down here. I think it adds some interest and it allows you to do some contrasting looks. The formula of these is really good. Like the matte formula is, I don't think it's anything revolutionary, but the mattes work. They're pigmented, they blend well, they don't get patchy, they blend together well. I think my only complaint about this palette is that a lot of these like midtones will blend into themselves or blend into each other and you won't get that definition unless you are actually like stamping the color on and keeping them relatively separate and not blended. But otherwise, this is a beautiful formula. I actually do have another Bella Boute Bar palette in my cart right now. The new like Valentine's Day palette from ColourPop really caught my eye, but I kind of felt like it was a little bit toned down, like the colors were a little bit toned down to where I feel like when you blend them on the eye, they're going to just get a little bit muddy because there's not enough like Bam pigment in them. But there is another palette from Bella Boute Bar that reminded me of the ColourPop palette. And let me see if I have those two pulled up in my phone still. But yes, it is the Vamp Magnetic palette, and I'll pop a picture of it. But that one is definitely on my list. And if I am purchasing multiple palettes from an indie brand, especially at the prices of these indie brand palettes, then I love the formula. I stand by the formula. The shimmers on this are absolutely stunning. There's some really nice shifts in here. Cauldron is such an interesting shade because like it looks teal green in my viewfinder, but then I can look at it and it looks like bluish purple. So it is just a gorgeous shade. And that was just a little bit of a tap into that shade and I'm getting that beautiful pigment. So I think that Bella Boute Bar is doing something very special. Some of their color stories I don't really get along with, but the ones that actually like stand out to me, I am looking forward to another one of her palettes. So I think if I can look at my budget and if I can like justify it to myself to at the very beginning of the year buy a $72 palette, I definitely am interested in more palettes from Bella Boute Bar. So the only thing that I don't like about some of their more recent palettes is that they've been bigger, and pretty much this is the size that I want to stick with. This is the size that fits into my storage. It fits on my shelves well. I don't want anything bigger than that. Plus, with my No Pan Left Behind, I really don't need to be bringing in a crap ton of more shades. But I purchased both of those in April of last year. No palettes in May. In June, I purchased 2 palettes. So I did purchase the Natasha Denona Golden palette, so the mid-size palette. I think that I can speak for pretty much everybody out there that we were disappointed that this didn't have the shades in there that made the gold palette special. Like lime chrome wasn't in there, the teals weren't in there. This is just a neutral brown, pretty golden palette. Now, if pretty neutral golden brown is your thing, there's nothing wrong with this palette. And actually, it has one cream to powder, which is this one right here, which is Pana, P-A-N-A. And so that one is the only cream to powder, so I like that it's a light shade because it's not going to fool you into thinking that it's a deep shade. But I mean, the formula is beautiful. It has a couple of her different textures in here. I feel like if I decluttered my Sultry palette, which is actually what I have on my eyes today, if I decluttered my Sultry palette, I feel like this could meet what that palette does. Of course, like I have all of the Natasha Denona mid-size palettes except for the Xenon, so I feel like I could do pretty much any of my mainstream palettes within my Natasha Denona. So if you already have like Urban Decay Naked Honey or Naked Heat, even though this one doesn't go really, really warm, but Naked Honey, you don't need this palette. If you already have they actually did have a golden palette from ColourPop. Again, you probably don't need this. So this has been done time and time again. There's nothing special about this color story because it's just browns and golds. But if the Natasha Denona formula works well on your eyelids, if it stays, if you like her formulas, then again, you can't go wrong with Natasha Denona. But whenever I did pick up the golden palette, I did pick up another one of the mini palettes, and I picked up Mini Metropolis, which is this one right here with that beautiful green. And again, this is a tan gold, but I wanted that green. I love Metropolis, and I love the teals that are in that palette, and so I really did want to try out this green. But otherwise, you're just getting a regular green and gold look. I don't know enough about football to say who is it. The Packers that are green and gold? So if you're a Packers fan, then you would also love this one. But the golden shade in this palette is just so impactful. Like you can see how much picked up on my finger just from tapping in there. So, and the green shade is a little bit thinner. So I feel like you could use this as an outer corner. You could use this as a liner. The green in here is really versatile. So if you like these mustard yellows in these palettes, then the Mini Metropolis is very, very nice. Let me wipe these off. Let me actually go back into the golden and see, yeah, there's not even a mustard in here. So if you want that mustard, then you would find it in the Mini Metropolis. You're not going to find it in the golden palette. But those were the two that I purchased in June. And then let's look at July. I did purchase two more minis. So these are the last two minis that I purchased to complete this palette. And that would be the Mini Rose and the Mini Biba, which are these two down here. I think when I was looking at what I wanted to complete this palette, I love pinks and I love like those cool tones. So the Love is in here. I never picked up the Mini Crush because I felt like it was almost too bright, like it would be almost too electric pink versus these more subdued pinks. So with the Mini Love, I really wanted to try out the Mini Rose just because I love those tones on me, and I knew that that would be a very nice complementary palette. So Mini Rose, which is the second from the bottom there, and then Love is right above it. So you see how these two kind of mesh off each other. And again, with the mini palettes and me creating this, I wanted something that I could reach into. So like Mini Zendo and Mini Retro, I feel like I could create a look with those. Then Gold and Metropolis, I can create a look with those. And then, you know, Mini My Dream can kind of mesh with anything. So I was really intentionally looking at the color stories that could go together, and I could create more looks than just reaching into a 5-pan. Now, the other one that I purchased at that time is Mini Biba, and this one down here, I wanted it because it's warm toned, and I wanted something in here that could be a little bit of a contrast, that if I wanted to mix some of the warm tones with some of the other shades up here, that I could reach for that. I kind of feel like Mini Zendo up top, like it almost is on the cusp of a warm tone, even though that shimmer is a cool tone, but I just felt like it would go really, really well with Mini Biba. And I almost didn't pick up Mini Biba because it does have 4 mattes and only 1 shimmer, and I like shimmers more, but I felt like in the overall scheme of this palette that the shimmers were pretty evened out. So most of the time in these palettes, you do get 2 shimmers. Now in Zendo and Retro, you do have, and Golden. So in her older minis, she did have 3 shimmers in those palettes before she went to this other configuration of 3 mattes and 2 shimmers, even though My Dream and Biba are the only 2 that have 1 shimmer. So I really picked these intentionally, knowing that I was doing this. So again, with the mini ones, they are great quality. They're travel friendly if you keep them in their packaging. I just didn't like storing all of those little palettes when I can just store them all in this. I did depot some of these palettes on my channel. I do not recommend it for the novice depotter. So I will try to link that video if editing Erin remembers. I will link that video because I don't recommend it for everybody to depot these Natasha Denona minis, but I made it work for me. So that was Mini Rose and Mini Biba, but I love both of them, and I love how they completed and wrapped up this mini palette that I wanted. Then we went into, Natasha Denona released another one. So this means that as I'm looking at these, she released 3 mid-size palettes in 2024 because I bought all of them, because I think Xenon was released in 2023. So the next one that we ended up getting from Natasha Denona is the I Need a Warm palette. And bless you guys, in my No Pan Left Behind, you guys enjoyed my That's What She Says, but the I Need a Warm, same thing. I need a warm what? What do you need a warm? What do you need? What I can think of quite a few things, but we will leave it at that, because even though you guys have your brains in the gutter and the brains of a 12-year-old, hey, you are my people. I'm glad I found my tribe, but I need a warm. Too bad I love this palette. Like, hate the name, love the palette. And as I was looking at, because I almost feel like it's unfair to put Natasha Denona up against my indie brands, because I think the indie brands will always rank above my Natasha Denona. But for a more mainstream brand and for what Natasha Denona is, her quality and her palettes are still really pretty. I just don't think it's fair to put them up against indie brands, because indie is pretty much going to always do it better. But if I looked at, if I was going to be ranking all of these, this would be pretty dang high. Mainly because the color story. Like, I love the Natasha Denona bronze palette because I love warm tones. It makes my blue eyes just pop whenever and actually my eyes turn a little bit more green whenever I wear warm tones, but it really makes my eyes pop whenever I have on a warm tone. And so this is right up my alley with these kind of like fiery shades down here. And this one here is a duochrome, so whenever I'm looking at it, it looks like old gold, but you guys are seeing that fiery shade right there. But these fiery red base shades, love them to pieces. This does not have, actually no, it does have one cream to powder, and that is the flash over shade down here. So this is where I get disappointed, because you look at all of the darker browns in here and you think that flash over is going to be dark like these, but it's not. It's not going to come out as dark as what you're seeing in the pan. Maybe that is okay, because we already have these 2 shades right here that kind of have the same depth. This one's a little bit deeper than the one in the center, but you have these 4 browns that look very similar. So for this one to come off not as true to color, that probably does help this palette out a little bit, because like I said, from just looking in my viewfinder, which I'm sorry I'm not looking at the lens, but I'm looking at the color story, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shades in here, which is a third of the palette, that look very similar. But of course this one down here is a shimmer, and it does come off lighter on the finger. And then of course flash over is a cream to powder, so it's going to come off lighter on the skin. Then is it Pep? PEP. So you can see that pep comes off deeper than flashover. But these still are beautiful shades. I love, let me see if I can get the, I mean, Natasha Denona is doing the duochromes that like ColourPop is probably doing these same shifts. So it's not anything that is revolutionary, but it is something that is adding to the mainstream, because you're not going to walk into like a Sephora and see Bella Butte Bar or Odin's Eye, but this is kind of the putting your toe in the water of a duochrome in the mainstream market, which I can appreciate. But the I Need a Warm palette, I did purchase this in this is in August is when I bought this one, and I don't regret it. I love this. I can't wait for this one to roll back into my No Pan Left Behind. That one definitely will be a staple for me during the summertime. And then let's see here. The next time that I bought a palette was in October, and that is because Natasha Denona released the Ruxa palette. So this was the purple palette, and this is quite different than the Love palette, which leans more pink and red, over this one leaning a little bit more purple. I did a palette bingo with this one, and I think I told you guys my main complaint is that these three shades down here, these three mattes, once you get them on the eyes, they look like the same color, at least on my skin tone. I am not putting these shades down on like a white base or anything. I am going onto my skin tone with these shades. And even though this one looks more pink, this one looks more red, this one looks more purple, they looked the exact same whenever I put them on my eyes. So that's the part that sometimes I feel like these mainstream palettes a little bit miss the mark for people that are a little bit more knowledgeable about formulas and how shades blend together. And I just feel like some of that is lost when there could have been just a slight change to the pigment or the undertone to actually make these shades three different shades. But again, if you guys have a different skin tone and those work on you, excellent. I love that. Just for me and my skin tone, they blend into the same thing. But these do have some beautiful shades, and again, a lot of different formulas. So like Brink and Concord, and I thought that Dixie might be a dupe for Earthshine, but I love this. This is the elevated It's My Pleasure palette. This is elevated from that. This formula is better than that. Let me actually get Flutter on my pinky because that's one of her ultra glitter ones. And so these are just gorgeous. But if you look at the difference between these shades right here, and if I go into Basic Witch, so I'm not comparing color stories or anything, I'm just comparing formula. Let me pick up a few of these pinks just so we can see. And I am barely tapping into these shades. But look at the difference in the payoff. So this is Basic Witch. This is Natasha Denona. You can just see the extra pigment that is put into these indie shades. You can see that there's more base. You're going to get more impact when you put these on your lids versus when you put a mainstream palette on your lids. So it's almost like when I go to swatch out the Natasha Denona ones, you can't even really tell that I have 4 swatches on my hand. You cannot tell. But let me wipe my fingers off. When I take the Bella Butte Bar and I put these swatches on my hand, you can tell there's 3 swatches on my hand. So that is also the biggest difference between what I'm seeing in mainstream and what I'm seeing, which I want to swatch Cauldron and Hocus Pocus, Because again, these shades are just incredible. So pretty. This is Boute Bar. Let me swatch the last shimmer in here so we can see all of them. Look at that one at the top. That fiery shade that mixes with these other cool tones. Absolutely stunning. You're not getting this from Natasha Denona. And I think that if you are going in knowing that, then that's fine. But if you're going in and you're seeing these sparkly shades and you're seeing these duochromes and you're expecting this, you're not going to get it. And with this palette and Natasha Denona palettes now being $69, and the Boute Bar ones are $72, plus you can use discount codes pretty much everywhere. But with these being within a couple dollars of each other, you have to say to yourself, do I want something more mainstream? Do I want something more like more of a wash of color, or do I want this impact? And that's what you have to ask yourself when you're looking at the difference between what, you know, Natasha Denona is coming out with and what Indie is coming out with. And oh my goodness, now I have a mermaid hand. I'm going to rub it all over my palm because I just want a mermaid hand. Oh, I love that. It's so sparkly. My hand actually looks hydrated for once in my lifetime. But that is all of the Natasha Denona, and that leaves me with the last palette. I bought this at the very end of the year. You guys just saw this in my buys and buys, and unfortunately I have not been able to test this entire palette out yet, and that's the Cosmic Beauty Undergrowth palette. But this, even without testing out the whole palette, these two would have ranked number 1 and number 2. And that would be strictly on formula and color story, which are the two best things that like matter. But I love this color story. I love grungy greens. I love the swampiness. I love this color. I want to live in this color story, especially in the fall. Like I just want to live in this color story. And I know enough about ooh, I have glitter all over me now. But I know enough about Cosmic Beauty formulas to know that this is their regular wonderful formula. But let me see. Like I said, I'm covered in glitter, and I'm just wiping it on myself at this point. But let me go into Undergrowth was really pretty. Let's go into Boggy. And this is also the first time that I've swatched some of these other shades. Let's look at Wilderness, and let's look at Fireflies, because that is what you get. And this is not me scrubbing into this palette. Let me actually show you the, okay, I'm going to go into Fungi, which is right down here. I'm going to do it with my thumb. If I go, how lightly I'm barely tapping into this, that is what we get. That beautiful, it's on a thumb, so it's weird, but these are so soft, so creamy. I mean, let me look at that. That is just stunning. You are not getting this from mainstream palettes. You're just not. And I would say that Cosmic Beauty is probably one of the more affordable indie brands that are out there. How much did I spend on this palette? So of course I use somebody's code for everything, but I spent $34 on this palette, and it is gorgeous. So I'm not necessarily saying that there's anything spectacularly different between a $70 palette and a $34 palette, especially because you get more shades. I think that they're putting more special shades into Boute Bar. They're putting more shifty shades, maybe more of that duochrome and trichrome or multi-chrome pigments they're putting into these palettes. That's what's driving up the cost. But if you, which I just watched the Angie just put out her video on the Cosmic Beauty Lover palette. I don't know if I'm going to pick that one up. I do like the color story, and actually somebody in the comments said that it looked like an elevated and kind of what we wanted from the Retro Glam, which is my least favorite Natasha Denona palette, but I don't know if I'm going to pick that one up just because I feel like that color story might be a little bit redundant in my collection. Not like this one isn't, Erin. This color story is very redundant, but it's because I love it. So this formula is gorgeous. Her mattes are always really, really good. I've had trouble with a couple of her dark mattes in the Muse palette before, but I didn't have any trouble with the dark mattes in the Gothic palette. So I'm going to be curious what I think about the dark mattes in this palette here. And if I ever do decide to do a get ready with me in the upcoming weeks or whatever, maybe I'll use this palette in the get ready with me just so I can test those things out in person. But if I look at the palettes that I bought last year, I'm not sad about any of them. I'm not disappointed. They all serve a purpose, and I don't think that there would be, because Natasha Denona just released another mini palette, but it's all of the mattes. And again, I don't need any more mattes in my collection. So every single mini palette that I purchased that helped me create this, they all serve a purpose in this color story. I don't think that there's anything necessarily that I would change about this color story. I think that everything fits the way it's supposed to. Everything is very pleasing as my eye rakes over it. So I don't regret any of the 4 minis that I purchased. I absolutely do not regret the Basic Witch palette. If this is your color story, if this is your jam, 1000% recommend. 1000%. I actually am getting a little bit of the itch to just buy the Vamp palette and just have that, because I love reds on my eyes too. Again, I know a lot of times it makes people look like they're sick, but I love them. Again, this one, right up my alley. The color story is beautiful. The price is right. The shimmers and the duochromes in here and the shifts are just beautiful. So if there is a color story from Cosmic Beauty that catches your eye, 1000% recommend. And then I think with Natasha Denona, the only thing that I can say is know why you're purchasing these. So when you are purchasing Natasha Denona, and I have to even tell myself this, that I am purchasing these now more, as I'm blinding my camera, more of a collector's mentality. And I don't want to get stuck on that for too long, because you guys know that my whole spiel here is conscious consumerism. But I kind of feel like with my Natasha Denona collection that I could get rid of everything else and be content with these palettes, and that feels okay. If it ever gets to the point that I feel like she is releasing similar color stories and I'm able to skip some, so I don't have the completionist mindset with Natasha Denona, I just have the collector's mentality. So I actually have run out of room on my shelf for Natasha Denona. I have filled up all of that. So I will either have to make room and reorganize a little bit, or I'm going to have to be very intentional about what I bring in from Natasha Denona in the future. But I feel like I still have $400 of my budget for my palettes for the year, or actually $450 because I tacked on the extra money that was left over from 2024. But I have $450 to spend on palettes, and that to me, when I look at indie palettes, because again, $72 for one palette, that's taking like a fifth of my budget right there. If I purchased 5 palettes for about that price, I would be done for the year. Now, that might be a good thing because I'm running out of room for palettes, but also that limits what I can try. So I am also trying to be intentional about the cost of things, and if I am going to bring a $70 indie palette into my collection, then I want it to be something special, and I want it to be something that actually works and it'll actually get used. I'll get excited about it. And the Bella Boute Bar Vamp palette is it's sticking with me. It has its hold on me. So I am very, very interested to see if that one joins my collection in the upcoming weeks. I don't know if she has like a Valentine's Day sale or anything, so I'd be curious if the brand does that. That might be my time, but also I know that those palettes sell out and then you end up on a wait list if she actually restocks. So that's the other hard part about indies. But that is me going over the 9 palettes that I brought into my collection in 2024. I hope that you guys can kind of see by the way that I went through them that I don't know if I could rank them, because they all serve a purpose or they all are bringing something to the table, whether it's just for me to compare or see how it fits in my collection or complete my mini palette. You know, they serve a purpose. Again, if later on in the future, if I feel comfortable ranking or rating or reviewing my ER palettes, those will pop back on my channel at a later date whenever some of that has been resolved. But for right now, those palettes are just sitting in my collection, kind of in the background. So, but I want to hear from you guys. What is your number one palette that you purchased in 2024? I think that if I had to say which one am I most excited, and I've only used 4 shades out of it. So, but just the color story and knowing the formula makes me the most excited about continuing to use this one in 2024. But let me know what you guys think. Or what is your favorite indie brand? Have you tried the Vamp palette? Tell me about your experience with that. How are the mattes? Because I know sometimes reds can be a little bit tricky. Tell me about that. Tell me your favorite palette of 2024. Is there a particular brand or release or palette that you're looking forward to, or even a color story that you're looking forward to in 2025? Let me know all of those down below. I love our conversations in the comment section, but I'm also going to encourage you to do all the rest of the things. I'm going to encourage you to hit a thumbs up on this video as I look at these beautiful shades. I'm also going to encourage you, if you are new or if you are lurking, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free for you guys, but of course it helps me out a lot. I do project panning, conscious consumerism, beauty budgets. I do my empties and my purchases. I do chatty get ready with me's where I psychobabble to you guys. My puppy dogs make appearances, but they are all sleeping right now. It is a rainy day today. So, but that's kind of what I do on my channel. Click around, check it out, see what you guys think. But I do appreciate you guys spending some time with me, but I'm going to go ahead and go. This video turned out longer than I thought, but that's because I never can shut my mouth. But all right, I'm going to go. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. I'm going to wish you all a beautiful day, and I'm going to catch you in my next one.